Inside a wind turbine tower, a large bundle of cables transfers power from the generator in the nacelle to the power conditioning equipment transformer at the base. As wind shifts direction throughout the day, there may be occasions where a turbine follows it in a complete circle, north to east to south to west, and then another circle, north to east to south to west, and then another circle, north to east to south to west, in the same direction. For every full turn in one direction, the output cables of the generator get twisted together, and a sufficient number of turns in the same direction may tighten the cable bundle to a degree they suffer damage. For this reason, the rotary encoder is an essential input to the system. From a designated home position established upon installation, the turbine uses the rotary encoder to keep track of the nacelle present angular position. In addition to present angular position, the controller also keeps a running tally of how many full revolutions in one direction have been accomplished. At a certain point, maybe 3 or 4 full twists in one direction, the controller is like, enough is enough, let's unwind, and momentarily halts production to unwind an equal number of full turns backwards in the opposite direction, resetting the cable bundle to a slack position and the turn count to 0. Additionally, the turbine takes advantage of extended periods of low or no wind conditions when production ceases to take time to unwind to a slack condition. The obvious problem with this arrangement is this. What if the controller forgets how many full turns it's made in one direction? I mean, it happens, right? Industrial systems sometimes experience unexpected shutoffs or errors that wipe out data. There's really no direct means of measuring the number of full turns, and this is a piece of stored data generated by the controller continually monitored in the rotary encoder. What happens if you lose this? Well, for this reason, turbines also include a backup electromechanical twist switch, which is essentially a limit switch tied to the cable bundle. If the turbine ever forgets the number of turns it's made, and the cables keep getting twisted up, they eventually pull so hard the twist switch is triggered, and it's like, hey, dummy, are you lost? And the controller is like, oh yeah, I should probably unwind. In this sense, the hardwired electromechanical twist switch acts like a backup to the incremental rotary encoder and software-based positional data in case the controller ever loses its mind, which is always a possibility. Now that we've got an idea how a turbine detects in which direction to yaw and by how much, as well as handle cable twist, let's discuss how the turbine determines when it is appropriate to yaw. For obvious reasons, a turbine doesn't chase every gust of wind that comes along, but only does so when the wind is above a certain predetermined value and sustained for a certain duration. Long story short, the wind has got to be strong enough and there long enough for the turbine to yaw in that direction. You recall the anemometer measures wind speed. This is a critical input for this particular decision. You recall a wind turbine possesses something known as a power curve with several notable points, principally the cut-in speed and the rated speed. The cut-in speed is the wind speed at which a turbine is first capable of generating power, whereas the rated speed is the wind speed at which a turbine produces its rated output. Consider a turbine in the middle of a field on a totally calm day, struck by the weakest of weak wind gusts well below the cut-in speed. Is the turbine going to yaw or not? Chances are no. Why bother? Any wind less than the cut-in speed isn't worth chasing since it can't be used to make power, so why bother? If, however, the anemometer detects a gust of wind above the cut-in speed, the controller, rather than yawing instantly in that direction, begins a countdown to see if the gust is sustained long enough to make it worth its time to yaw in that direction. If a gust above the cut-in speed isn't sustained for a specified period of time, the turbine returns to the idle state and waits to see if something worthwhile shows up. If, however, the gust is both above the cut-in speed and sustained for a specified period of time, the turbine checks the wind vane and determines in which direction it needs to yaw or if it needs to yaw at all. Presuming twist count in that direction is below the unwind value, the turbine needs to yaw in the direction indicated by the wind vane. Now that we've discussed how the turbine controller utilizes the data provided by the wind vane to determine in which direction to yaw and by how much, the rotary encoder, cumulative twist count, and twist switch to manage cable tension, and the anemometer data to determine if wind speed and duration is sufficient to warrant repositioning the nacelle, let's walk through a simulated yaw sequence. Let's see if we've got enough space to see what the PLC inputs and outputs, the primary electrical, and the primary hydraulic systems do during a yaw. Got a feeling this is going to get pretty busy. For demonstration purposes, let's say the turbine has decided it needs to yaw clockwise. Again, to simplify the simulation, we're going to concern ourselves only with yaw motor 1, with the understanding that yaw motors 2 through 4, and for that matter, 5 through 8, are all doing the same thing. Prior to energizing the yaw motors, the turbine first needs to remove the yaw brakes. Presuming we begin this scenario with yaw brakes applied in a pressurized standby condition, with Sol 1 energized to the closed position and Sol 2 de-energized in the closed state. To release the yaw brakes, the system energizes Sol 2 to the open state, which dumps pressure in the yaw brake cylinders to tank. The springs in the rod end retract the cylinders and release the brakes. It's a simple matter of verifying if the yaw brakes are released when pressure at pressure switch PSY falls. Once the status of the brakes have been verified, the controller then energizes output Q1, the coil for the clockwise contactor. The clockwise contactor closes, as do the clockwise contactors for the remaining motors. The motors energize in the clockwise direction, and the nacelle starts doing a slow crawl clockwise. You note auxiliary contact CW1 associated with the clockwise contactor also closes, confirming that the yaw clockwise action is proceeding as intended. As the nacelle continues to yaw clockwise, not only does the displacement error indicated by the wind vane slowly decrease, the rotary encoder also indicates clockwise travel. We'll discuss what happens if the rotary encoder doesn't change, or worse yet, indicates counterclockwise travel in a moment. Once the wind vane indicates the nacelle is pointed into the wind with zero error, the system de-energizes output Q1. The coil for the clockwise contactor de-energizes. The clockwise contactor opens, as do the clockwise contactors for the remaining motors. The motors de-energize, and the nacelle stops. You note auxiliary contact CW1 associated with the clockwise contactor also opens, confirming that the yaw clockwise action has ceased as intended. Now the system needs to apply the brakes. From the release state, first it enters a depressurized standby by de-energizing Sol 2, which returns to the closed position. Then the system de-energizes Sol 1, which shifts to the open position. The pump is energized and pressurized flow enters the cap end of the yaw brake cylinders. The yaw brake cylinders extend and apply the yaw brakes. Eventually, pressure switch PSY closes, indicating the yaw brakes have a good grip, at which point the system can move back to the pressurized standby state by energizing Sol 1, which shifts to the closed position. The nacelle is pointed in the right direction and parked in place. Now it's just a matter of releasing the rotor brake, pitching the blades to an appropriate angle, and making power. You'll note during the illustrated yaw sequence, at all times the twist count stored in memory generated by the cumulative monitoring of the rotary encoder serves to interrupt the yaw process should yawing in a particular direction ever cross a certain threshold. Additionally, you note behind this software-generated data stored in memory, there exists a real-world electromechanical twist switch that can equally call off a yaw in action if the controller ever loses track and cable strain becomes too much. In summary, by coordinating the sequence removal and application of the yaw brakes, the selective energizing and de-energizing of a paired reversing contactor, and monitoring the wind vane status, a turbine can readjust its position such that it faces into the wind. Now realize this sequence of action doesn't happen as smoothly as I indicated at all times, and there is plenty of chances for it to go wrong. For this reason, modern industrial wind turbine controllers often include automated error checks along the way, and a means of notifying technicians of conditions that led up to these errors. Some of these checks are quite simple, and others quite advanced. On a basic level, when tasked with yawing clockwise, the rotary encoder should indicate travel in the clockwise direction. If the rotary encoder doesn't move, or worse yet, goes in the opposite direction, something is wrong, and the system might generate an error. Similar statements can be made about the rotary encoder confirming counterclockwise rotation when supposedly yawing counterclockwise. Consider the act of removing and reapplying the yaw brake. You note that pressure switch PSY serves as confirmation of the status of the yaw brakes. If the system released the yaw brake and pressure at PSY failed to fall as anticipated, the system might generate an error categorized as failure to release yaw brake. Conversely, when the turbine arrived at the designated position and tried to reapply the brakes, if pressure at PSY failed to rise as anticipated, the system might generate an error characterized as a failure to apply yaw brake. Other opportunities for error detection exist. Consider a simple overload. As does pressure switch PSY indicate the status of the yaw brake to the system, so too do the normally open auxiliary contacts associated with the clockwise and counterclockwise contactor. When a contactor coil is energized, these auxiliary contacts should also close. This acts as confirmation of the controller's action. Beyond confirmation, the status of the auxiliary contacts can also indicate interruption of an action already in the works. Let's say during the course of a clockwise yaw, one of the yaw gearboxes experiences an alignment or lubrication issue, or perhaps that motor is being single-phased. current in the affected yaw motor would rise above the rated value, and at a certain point the normally closed overload contact in series with this contactor coil would open and de-energize the affected contactor coil. In addition to opening the affected contactor and de-energizing the affected motor, the normally open auxiliary contact would also open. The loss of input at this location during a yaw would tell the yaw system that a particular motor's contactor unexpectedly opened during operation, most likely because of an overload. The system might generate a motor protection error, indicating a potential overload at that particular motor. Lest you think errors are associated to events in which the turbine is actively yawing, consider a nacelle properly oriented into the wind and parked in place. In this presumably stable state, the rotor encoder should in no way ever send data indicating that the nacelle is turning. If, however, the rotor encoder starts sending data in a supposedly stopped state, the system will recognize a contradiction and might generate an error categorized as yaw drift. Depending on a particular wind turbine manufacturer's hardware setup and software configuration, the controller may or may not offer additional error detection abilities as well as performance monitoring systems. For example, some controllers, in addition to simply detecting an overload, may also continuously monitor current and can flag times in which the current approaches or exceeds predetermined limits and record these events. Beyond automatic control, wind turbines ordinarily offer a means of manually controlling the yaw system. As implied by the title, a manual override of the yaw system allows the technician to direct when and where to position the nacelle relative to the tower. Manual operation of the yaw might occur during repair or service operations to force the nacelle into a desired orientation, or perhaps be used to position load handling equipment like cranes or hoist above a load to be lifted. Depending upon manufacturer and model, manual mode might be as simple as a pair of buttons that say yaw clockwise and yaw counterclockwise, or as sophisticated as a touchscreen human-machine interface, or HMI, with the ability to yaw a turbine to a specified orientation. Be aware certain safety systems can be bypassed in manual mode, and a technician must be aware of the perhaps undesirable consequences of their every action. For example, in normal automatic operation, the turbine controller releases the brakes, confirms they're released, then energizes the yaw motors. Manual mode might necessitate a technician perform these actions independently. And a technician that fails to release the brakes prior to yawing, and everyone else in a 2-mile radius, would hear a sound that's been described as everything from a foghorn to the mating call of a Diplodocus, where the dragging brake pads use the resonant chamber of the tower as a 300-foot tall tuba. There is no pretending this mistake didn't happen. For this reason and more, be sure of your every action when taking manual control of any aspect of a wind turbine. All right, we're just about to close out this section, but before we do, let me answer a question that a lot of people have when asked in reference to the yaw system. Notably, how fast does an industrial turbine yaw? The answer is not very fast. I mean, think about it. Even a mid-sized turbine nacelle and rotor might weigh 80 tons, or 160,000 pounds, or roughly 72,000 kilograms. That's a lot of weight. Let's pretend the system employs 4 4-kilowatt motors. So that's 16 kilowatts, or roughly 21 horsepower. How fast could 21 horses drag 80 tons? Not very. The thing is, it doesn't need to be fast. In ideal power making conditions, wind ordinarily doesn't bounce from north to south, back to north again, but rather blows steadily from a relatively constant direction with only minor shifts throughout the day. What allows the yaw system to move this weight efficiently, steadily, and slowly is the step-down gearboxes, which convert the high-speed, low-torque input of the yaw motors to high-torque, low-speed rotation of the pinion gears that mesh with the yaw ring. In ordinary circumstances, you might expect a turbine to yaw at a snail's pace of maybe half a degree per second. 360 degrees per circle, half a degree per second, means 720 seconds, roughly 12 minutes for a full turn. Plenty of time to get out of the way. But woe unto those that do not get out of the way. Stepladder, I'm looking at you. At such a slow speed, 16 kilowatts of mechanical power exerts massive torque and will cut anything and absolutely everything in half that gets pinched between the yaw deck and the nacelle. For this reason, modern industrial wind turbines often include a yaw disable switch in the yaw deck, which is the last tower platform just below the nacelle. Prior to entering the nacelle, a technician would disable the yaw system, thus ensuring the orientation of the nacelle and tower will remain fixed during their stay. It is incumbent upon any technician that has disabled the yaw system for repair and maintenance task, remember to re-enable it prior to climbing down the tower and returning it to service, unless they're looking to climb the turbine again so they can reset it. All right, that's all I got for you today. In conclusion, this lecture examined the yaw system found on modern industrial wind turbines. We conducted a brief review of motor theory, reacquainted ourselves with primary and pilot electromechanical components commonly found in yaw systems, and introduced closed-loop control. We additionally examined how a turbine determines in which direction to yaw and by how much. Wind vane, I'm looking at you. How it handles too many turns in one direction. That's the responsibility of the software-generated twist count and the electromechanical twist switch. And discuss the strength and duration of wind necessary to make a turbine yaw. That's the anemometer's job. Finally, we took a look at a simulated yaw sequence and examined the checks performed during automatic yaw control and identified a couple scenarios that might yield a yaw error. Remember to review these concepts as often as you need to really drive it home. Imagine how well lab will go if you know what you're doing. Thank you very much for your attention and interest, and we'll see you again during the next lecture of our series. Remember to tell your lazy lab partner about this resource, and be sure to check out the Big Bad Tech channel for additional resources and updates.